Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
They're usually only here for 5 or 10 minutes. They take ID from our workers and then they leave. And they ended up actually sitting between our two doors in the foyer for like 45 minutes. And we had no idea what was going on. And then sure enough, this big truck comes up with gang suppression unit on the side, and these big 6 guys come in, and it really was intimidating. And that's only when AHS and OHS came in to issue the order.
AGLC, the City of Calgary, and Occupational Health and Safety essentially dogpiled on Outlaws, mostly relying on the preceding AHS order and Outlaws' purported non-compliance with that order. Outlaws had its liquor license pulled, its business license pulled, and its handling permit pulled, all without a hearing or without giving Outlaws the chance to respond or be heard. To impose such administrative procedural baggage on a business that was already on its last legs as a result of a year of lockdown measures in conjunction with a standing but unadjudicated mandatory closure order, this is a death sentence to any small business.
Today I have a very sad update to the case of Outlaws Taphouse in Calgary. It's been effectively murdered by the government. Now, Outlaws first came to us through our civil liberties project, fightthefines.com. The Calgary bar had received a shutdown order from Alberta Health Services because they were respecting human rights when it comes to enforcing mask laws. As in, if you say you're exempt from the mask laws, that's where the conversation ends. Owners Carrie Lambert and Marla Fraser, well, they weren't going to ask their customers or their staff to discuss their personal health information with them because that would be gross, pretty weird, a violation of human rights legislation, a violation of common decency, and of course, privacy. Anyway, the way the authorities dealt with Outlaws was heavy-handed from the very beginning. The city even sent the gang suppression unit of the Calgary Police Service to deliver a closure notice to Carrie and Marla, who I want to note are absolutely not gang members. Now, I met with Marla and Carrie in Calgary after I heard their story, and I offered them some help because, boy, did they ever need it. They were very nearly financially ruined by the ongoing lockdown. They were not able to serve liquor after 10 and forced to close at 11. That doesn't exactly work for bars. They were not able to let people come in to play pool or to dance. They are not able to host live music. And they're a live music venue. Their business model was basically cut off at the knees by the government. So we put them in touch with Chad Williamson from Williamson Law in Calgary. Now, regular viewers will know Chad as the litigation specialist who worked with Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop Cafe to force the government to back off of his restaurant. And we did all this at no cost to Marla and Carrie through the support of our viewers with their generous crowdfunding donations at fightthefines.com. And Chad Williamson, being the absolute best, got to work right away, but so did the government. Since Alberta Health Services was not able to bring Outlaws under the thumb of big government again, the other bureaucracies and enforcement agencies, those vultures, came after them to smother them, to stick a pillow on the face of Outlaws while the business laid languishing in its deathbed. Occupational Health and Safety, the City of Calgary, and Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis came too. Outlaws was stripped of their food handling permit for some reason. Their business license and their liquor license were both yanked. Why? Well, it all started because they wouldn't violate human rights legislation and force people to explain why they weren't wearing masks. That's what they did wrong. It's hard to believe what the government has done to Marla and Carrie and their staff, who they care deeply about. Here's their Fight the Fines lawyer, Chad Williamson, to update us on the fight to save Outlaws from the lockdown and from the weight of what seems to be the entire government coming down on top of them. Take a listen.
The outcome of the Outlaws case should be a matter of grave concern to all Albertans. We are disheartened to report that as a result of the heavy-handed, overbearing, and likely unconstitutional actions of the Alberta government and its league of administrative bodies, including Alberta Health Services, Outlaws has been rendered insolvent, and it's no longer capable of responding to the torrent of administrative actions that have been taken against it. Now, this mobilization against Outlaws largely began in relation to compliance with masking measures and contact tracing, which at all material times was actively and hotly disputed, and which should set off alarm bells here, and we've seen similar themes in other areas, is that Outlaws was essentially shuttered without a fair hearing. We take the firm and ardent position that this is not only a breach of the principles of natural justice, but also an infringement on the right to procedural fairness, which was denied to Outlaws. A loose summary of what happened is essentially that Outlaws received an order from AHS to comply with masking and contact tracing rules. Outlaws had indicated that unmasked individuals had exemptions, and also it's under our understanding that the contact tracing book was actually stolen from the premises. A closure order was immediately issued thereafter by Alberta Health Services. Our office immediately appealed the order. The law is written in such a way that the appeal actually doesn't stop the order that's in effect. The order remains in place unless a stay is granted by the appeal board or until it's revoked at the resolution of the appeal. We applied for a stay. During this time, AGLC, the City of Calgary, and Occupational Health and Safety essentially dogpiled on Outlaws, mostly relying on the preceding AHS order and Outlaws' purported non-compliance with that order. Now, again, these orders were hotly disputed and had not yet been adjudicated through the traditional appeal process with the Alberta Health Appeals Board. Outlaws had its liquor license pulled, its business license pulled, and its handling permit pulled, all without a hearing or without giving Outlaws the chance to respond or be heard. The rules are such that in order to challenge these bodies, Outlaws would essentially have to file an individual appeal with each of these organizations, which would likely not be heard for at least a month. Now, to impose such administrative procedural baggage on a business that was already on its last legs as a result of a year of lockdown measures in conjunction with a standing but unadjudicated mandatory closure order, this is a death sentence to any small business. These closures and the associated costs have rendered Outlaws incapable of pursuing its appeals without a hearing, and this is unjust. Outlaws is more than just a casualty here. We think these circumstances are indicative of a potential abuse of administrative process and are another example of how government bodies are able to obtain remedies and orders against Albertan businesses and Albertan individuals without oversight or adjudication. We have the right to procedural fairness in this province. This is a right which we believe has been usurped by a completely unreasonable and disproportionate response given the totality of the circumstances here. Now, this isn't the end of the saga. We're looking deeply into what has happened, and we'll be looking for additional remedies and additional opportunities to have this and other matters reviewed in accordance with the rule of law, which we still feel is of utmost importance here, especially during these turbulent times.
This is insane. It's despicable, actually. This business and these people were effectively destroyed by the heavy hand of the government. They were euthanized. Municipal and provincial bureaucrats collectively ganged up to stick a foot on the head of this business while Marla and Carrie desperately tried to keep their heads above water. You know what I think? I think someone needs to bring in the gang suppression unit to deal with that unholy alliance of bullies down at Calgary City Hall and in the provincial government. Now, as Chad says, Outlaws was rendered insolvent. Months of shutdowns from the government and then the dogpiling from the government that stripped them of any way to do business has made it impossible for them to pay their bills and just go on. It's disgusting. But you also heard Chad, it might not quite be over yet. And he's examining ways to hold these bullies accountable and maybe, just maybe, stop them from doing it to other people and businesses. Because you just know, Outlaws is not the only business this is happening to in Alberta. Now, if this sort of bureaucratic COVID thuggery is happening to you, let us try to help at no cost to you at fightthefines.com. Frankly, what have you got to lose? Better to go down swinging. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you've received a lockdown ticket or a fine or a summons, I don't want you to pay it. I want you to fight it. I want you to plead not guilty and send us that ticket at fightthefines.com, and we'll put you in touch with a lawyer or top litigation specialist at no cost to you. And if you'd like to help us help people like Marla and Carrie and the hundreds of other severely normal people all across this country who have received lockdown tickets for just trying to operate a business or go about their lives, you can donate to help with their legal fees at that same website, fightthefines.com.